Hello and welcome to Unify's webinar on improving the look and feel of your NXJ applications. And this is part one of a series. And presenting for us today is Kevin McCormick, who I'll introduce in a moment. But first I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items and the agenda. So first of all, we encourage you to ask questions. And the way you do that in this webinar session is using the WebEx toolbar. And at the bottom, there's a button with a question mark. Press on that one to enter your questions. And we ask that you use that instead of the chat so that Kevin and I have one panel to really look through and make sure we get to all the questions. Also, for those of you that are new to Unify, just some background on the host today. We're a publicly traded software company, and we've been in business for over 25 years. We're known for being the first to deliver a relational database in the Unix environment. But since then, we've delivered development software solutions that run across different databases and platforms, in addition to our own databases, really geared towards building and modernizing business applications and really focused on giving the best solution for business application developers. Those are the developers that are trying to deliver applications to the business users out there without having to do all the low-level coding, trying to do more of a 4GL type of approach in whichever platform they're trying to work on. And we have thousands of customers, and many of them are running applications that they've built in some of our solutions 10, 15 years ago. And in fact, some of them are still running it in those same original versions, which is a testament to just how industrial strength our products are. But what we've always done is try to give them a path to modernize those applications they've built in our technologies into the latest platforms that they're moving forward in. And specifically on the product today that you're going to see, NXJ, it is a complete development and deployment environment for building and integrating applications in a service-oriented architecture. It's received industry recognition for its innovative approach and productivity gains that it gives to those business application developers trying to build those complex business applications for the web. And it includes a forms builder and as well as a component for quickly building and deploying web services as well. And what our customers tell us is it really helps, NXJ really helps reduce the cost of training and development and infrastructure in several ways. In fact, what we most often hear is that customers see over a 75% reduction in the time to build the rich internet applications in NXJ compared to a low-level coding approach in Java editors or even .NET. And NXJ is database and application server independent. So these can be deployed out into various environments like JBoss, IBM WebSphere, VEA WebLogic, or Oracle Application Server. And you can also deploy it as portlets into your portal infrastructures. So with that, what I want to do is introduce Kevin here, who's going to go over his agenda. But also you can see the logo on there. We want to wish everybody a happy Earth Day as well. In fact, usually on these webinars, we have customers and interested prospects from around the world attend these webinars. So happy Earth Day to all of you. And then once Kevin goes over his content and his demo, we'll have the Q&A session. So it's great to have Kevin presenting for us today. He's been with us for over 15 years. Prior to here, he was at Lockheed, actually, as a system administrator. But with his, so he's been on the end user side as well. But with his roles at Unify over the years, he's been in various technical roles from all the way from pre-sales to post-sales. You name it, he's done it. He's been a pre-sales technical engineer, working with customers on the requirements and putting together the best proposal for a solution. He has been on the post side doing technical support, being a tech support manager, as well as just a kind of senior technical account manager. He is also our lead trainer. In fact, he does the training on NXJ, and he's been involved with NXJ since its inception about, was it 5.5 years now? Maybe it was like it was October or end of October, early November, 5.5 years ago. So it's a great opportunity to have him speaking on this product, and he's actually worked with a lot of our NXJ customers on their applications. So when it comes to the agenda today, which is really all about Kevin's approach on these topics, again, this is part one, so it's kind of an introductory, but it's about what can you do with your NXJ applications around the user experience. What can you do to help improve and refresh the user experience? It's not so much going into use this color or that color. You know, Kevin's not going to tell you how to create a very specific style. In fact, Kevin will probably be the first to tell you that colors and styles is not his thing. But there are things that you can do with NXJ aside from that can help with the user experience, and also just from a development standpoint, make you more productive in trying to create the best user experience that you can. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kevin.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And indeed, you do not want me picking colors and potentially even fonts for your application. But I can tell you if it's a good one when I see it. So as Matt said, again, happy Earth Day. Some of you are wrapping that up. Those of us here in California are just beginning it. And in honor, all of our lights are off here. So what we're going to talk about today is, again, the user experiences in NXJ applications. We'll demonstrate a production application, go into some of the details into what's implemented in there, and then also talk a little more specifically about toolbars and style sheets, and with NXJ, how they're implemented and how you can use them to snazz up your application a bit. Let's get to our right slide here. So, user experience, updating your applications. We found this slide from some magazine from a long time ago. So it just seemed appropriate. It's the user experience. It's their first encounter with the application. It's how many times does your end user, if you're an intranet application, does the end user have to call your IT help desk to say, how do I do this in the application? How do you make it easier for them to figure it out? So we'll talk about some user experience features that we've implemented in an application we call VIA mode for the transportation industry. Then we'll talk about toolbars and how to update the ones that NXJ supplies. And then we'll go to a little bit about style sheets and how to use those to, again, make your user experience better. So for the user experience part of it, we're going to talk about breadcrumbs. So no, even though it's breakfast here, this is more about user navigation. And then we'll talk about record navigation, how to make it easier for your users to navigate large data sets. And then we'll talk about data view controls, and that's sort of a personal discussion that I like to have so users can get to their records and not be confused. So breadcrumbs. Many sites you'll see on the web now have some way or another to show where you are in the application and allow you to navigate between the application without having to go through menus or other steps and buttons. So you can see what path you've gone down, hence the name breadcrumbs. NXJ doesn't have a built-in breadcrumb control, but by using some of the standard features of links and boxes and other things, you can create one pretty easily. So we'll see one in a demo here in a moment. The way you implement this with NXJ is, again, usually what you'll see is in the picture here, we have a box with a series of links that we dynamically change the text under visibility and give them context sensitive for navigating back to the other form to get the user to where they were in the past. Now this uses a Java class that we can give you, so just contact us at the end if you'd like this, that works with the form stack. So everything's done in Java and NXJ, either you doing it or you using our accelerator abilities of coding, or you can use straight Java. And the concept of our form stack knows which form you visited, and so using that, you can construct the breadcrumb pretty easily. And again, we'll see that in a demo in just a few. So one of the other things we see is that users have large amounts of data, and the users need to be able to navigate through them. You can't necessarily send, for example, on the screenshot, 163 rows to the browser or 1,000 rows to the browser. You want the users to be able to go through them set by set in an easy fashion. So in the application we'll see as a demo, we've implemented an Outlook kind of navigation page where you can type in a page number or scroll through the sets of records easily. So again, allowing your users to navigate without waiting for the browser to load them all and slowing things down. Now this is actually implemented as a data view object that gets embedded inside a form or another data view, and it signals it to do the navigation. And again, this is a control that we've built, and we will gladly supply it to you if you want to use it, or at least use it as a starting point. But when you drop this to the NXJ reusability, all you need to do is to do 2 lines of code, one to cause it to update as you navigate between records, and one is during the init data view section or the before form section to initialize it. And that's all you have to do to use the page navigation. So in NXJ, when you have the toolbar at the top of a form, and we'll see that in a regular demo application, what you'll see is that if you have a complex form where you have nested data regions, so data views in NXJ terminology, depending on where your mouse focus is, those controls behave differently, and that confuses users sometimes. They expected to do a new search on the main form, but instead they get a new search on the child data view. So my recommendation is, and when we get to toolbars, we'll mention this again, is to have the top-level toolbar only work on the form and have embedded controls in each of the embedded data regions that work against that data itself. And again, we'll see this in the demonstration in just the next slide here. But you do that, in our case, because NXJ is Java, so everything's reusable, we tend to create reusable boxes, as we see in this one image here, that is showing, for example, we have a box that is DB ops all, so all database operations, which is a series of buttons that do the standard clear for find, a search, and new records, and so on. And we can drop that wherever we need to. It has the built-in functionality, so it knows how to do a find, and we give it, which is really one of the properties that people overlook in NXJ, is the command context that says, where does this operation happen on? And parent, I'll pause here for a moment, parent simply says, wherever this button is placed on, wherever it sits on, whether it's on a data view or on a form, execute it there regardless of where the mouse has focus. So again, this is sort of a thing I've seen users struggle with, so I always mention this both in class and took the opportunity during this webinar. So what I want to show now is our VIA mode application. This is an in-production application. This is a demo version of it that we host here at Unify. The goal of this application is to keep track of truck drivers and distribution centers and deliveries to grocery stores, and it takes onboard computer data, processes it, calculates it, and this gets used in a variety of fashions for driver efficiency, for performance-based pay, all sorts of various things, and it gets pretty detailed. So I'll log in. You'll notice that we had the login screen, we had the Remember Me feature, so we're using NXJ's ability to work with cookies to store information. So what we're seeing here is the beginning of the application. We have a series of menus at the top that are driven by a series of tables and user permissions. So it's not a static menu. Instead, it simply is database driven based on their permissions. And so we have different applications just depending on where we want it to go. Let's see if I can pick a couple of entertaining ones here. Let's pick user administration. And one thing I want to do here is just to get to show our breadcrumbs. So notice here we have user information, and you'll notice we also have driver information. We have our navigation bar showing record 5 of 574. We can jump 100 at a time by doing that. Now 101 to 201, jump to the last record. If we had to send all the records through here, that would be a lot of records. Instead, we have 100 per set, which may even be a bit much. As we add more items onto our navigation tree, we can go look at, again, we're not worried about this application, we're just bringing a couple of things on here. And let's do user administration. Looking for a more entertaining form here to bring up. And we talked about the menu administration, so we'll bring that up too. Well, you'll notice as each of these comes up, we have where we were in the application, what forms are still active on the form stack. So at any point, we can go back to the user administration one, and it will remember where we are at, because we were at 574 at the last record. So we always can go back to, you'll note that the other forms we visited, those are now gone on the form stack. We'd have to revisit those in order to see those again. Now, one thing I did want to show is that we said that this application deals with a lot of data. So no, we don't see too many applications this size, but we want to show you that just how well NXJ can handle this. One of the things I didn't mention in the presentation is that for this application, we ended up going with a search area to drill down to records. So if you know the driver's number or their name, or you want to search for a certain range, which is what I'm going to do, so 12409 to that same day, and we're going to do a search. So this is implemented as a data view that then feeds the search criteria to the main form, and as you'll see, we have some child data as well. And what we saw, because of all the data that's being shown here, we chose to highlight a lot of the information using colors. So we have a legend here to describe different things. And again, we're not going to go into details about what you're seeing here, but just showing that in NXJ, you can make a nice spreadsheet-like application in NXJ that gives very powerful search, sorting, highlighting of data, and in case we also have the ability to call the NXJ enterprise reports as well. And so you'll see that we can get all the data, we can sort by different values, we can resize columns, and so on. Now, one thing, that last part I'll bring about here, make sure we covered all the topics I wanted to do. So we have the breadcrumbs, we have the navigation bar, and what was our third one there? And the style sheets. We'll get to those in just a second here. Okay, so one other thing here that we've seen users do, and you see more and more with the Google Mail and others, is the ability to do checkboxes of items. So this is using the batch mode processing that NXJ has to defer the operations, so we can check the various options before we even do a server round trip, and then process them all at once, remove all the reports that we've generated in the past, and I'll go refresh the data view. Okay, so I won't continue more on this because this is not a via mode demo. This is more showing some ideas and concepts for data views. But I do want to, because now I remember the part I knew we were missing something here. So what you're seeing here, we have a small version of this, is that we have the series of buttons to navigate these records, but then we also have a series of control buttons down here, so that when you do a new record, it does a new one down the bottom here, rather than doing a new driver. If we want to do a new driver, we'd have permissions to do that on the button up here. So my concept is that you take buttons for localized area of the form and put them there rather than rely on a series of top-level buttons or toolbar that may confuse the user. And when we get to the invoice application demonstration, you'll see that even clearer. Okay, so toolbars. Via mode application, we chose to not use toolbars on that, but most customers do use a toolbar. So anyone who's worked with NXJ and created default forms or used the built-in toolbar that NXJ supplies will notice getting a little bit older look and feel. We'll be honest with that. So it looks a little bit dated. And in the current version of NXJ, we don't give you direct access to editing that toolbar. Instead, we give you an easy way to construct new toolbars. And that's whether it's going to be a full toolbar, like our second image there, for a regular form where you have all the database operations, as well as record navigation, as well as exiting the application, Or do you do the lookup, the pop-up window form, where you have a subset of those controls where you're only doing searches, you're not doing updates or deletes, you're just choosing records, navigating, and then returning those values back. So toolbars are created as what we call Toolbar Object, and those are always in the static content folder of your NXJ project. If your toolbar is going to use images like those two on the previous page, those images need to be also in your static content. They can be in their own folder, or they can be at the same level as the toolbar. And note that in that image before, we have some spacer images that have the gradation of the color to space things in between. For example, our next form, previous form, there's actually a spacer image in between to make it flow cleanly. So you use an image button object, and you tie that, of course, the image you want, whether it's the clear or the search button, as you see in the toolbar picture here. You set the command to the NXJ command or your developer-defined command to do, whether it's a new search with a clear defined or a find or an update. And as I mentioned when talking about the via mode demo, the top level toolbar, I would set the command context to form so that the operations happen at the form level. And that can then trickle down to the data view. But when we get to the example, you'll see that I did data view specific ones as well. Now, this toolbar, and I actually will take a moment to thank one of our consultants in our French office, Henri, for doing this toolbar. It's one he uses at customers. So he did the nice graphics and set this up. And I mention that because if you need to localize the toolbar, NXJ makes it very easy to do that simply by creating locale-specific folders under the static content directory, and having the images in there that have the appropriate language on it. And as you switch locales, you can have it switch automatically to the correct toolbar with the correct language. Okay, so that, we'll see toolbars as an example when we get to the next part of the demo. Want to step for a moment over to Stylesheets. We're working in a browser environment, so you're going to be using cascading Stylesheets. NXJ supplies 4 by default. One's called default. Then a flat one, so not many colors. One because of our Lotus migration abilities, so matching some of the colors there. And then a silver theme. You can construct your own, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Currently, NXJ 12 supports CSS level 1 descriptors, which means the editor only knows about CSS 1 properties. We'll get to why that's important in just a moment. You can use level 2, but there's a caveat as to how you edit them. So in a style sheet, you have what's called a selector. NXJ style sheets supplied with NXJ have the selectors for all of the controls we have, whether it's a text field, a radio group, a checkbox, buttons, and so on. You can create your own. Oh, by the way, we also do standard behavior, what the selected row color is in a grid, what the alternate row color is. These are all pre-created for you. You can modify them as much as you want, and you can add your own selectors, as we'll see in a moment during our example, our demo of using one for required fields, so that you can identify required fields for users easily. So one thing to mention is the way the style sheets are applied to an application is through a look and feel object. There's only one current at a time in an NXJ application, and those look and feel objects are tie that to a style sheet. So they also tie your toolbars, by the way, as well. And so what you'll see in the bottom image here is that we have our default style sheet and the default look and feel pointing to the default style sheet. Usually if you create a new style sheet, you'll create a new look and feel to go with that. And at deployment time, you can figure out which is going to be your default style or default look and feel, so you can deploy the application and have it be branded for different customers or different styles. If you want to use some of the newer features in CSS Level 2, we'll see just a couple of those on the next sheet or next slide, you can do this. You can either work with an existing style sheet or create one and import it into NXJ by placing it in the stat content folder outside of NXJ and adding that file so NXJ knows how to manage it. But you need to use an external style sheet editor. The one I use is Top Style Lite. It's free. It gives me everything I need to do. It'll tell you whether you're using CSS level 1, 2, or 2.1 descriptors. But if you try and edit that style sheet, NXJ nicely says, hey, you're editing one that we don't know how to work with. You're going to lose those properties. So that's that dialog in the middle. Press no, because you don't want to lose your work that you did. And you'll notice on the left we have a new style called Skin 1 that was added to take advantage of some of the new features cascading style sheets. So a couple of things on CSS level 2. Two of the things that I found that are important with it is that you can now set a value to the word inherit, and that will then inherit from its container in the browser. So you don't have to explicitly set everything to a font or a color, so it can be marked to inherit. So in case you change one thing, it'll trickle down. The one that I found most interesting that will allow your applications to be more client-server-like is that you can set, for example, the background color to the Windows system settings. So whether it's the colors or the font. So the drop-down list on the right is a screenshot from Top Style Lite, and saying the background color, and what you're seeing on that drop-down list, these are actually items from your Windows control panel, or the same names for them. So if you change the Windows control panel, a user has a line green as a background, for example, that would show up on your form or your button, depending on what you're editing. One thing to note, the last bullet there, those are not likely to render. These CSS level 2 constructs are not likely to render in the IDE. So you'll have to know that they will show up when you test them, but most likely, again, not in the IDE. We know that. Look for that in the future to be addressed. So, style sheets. And to create some examples here that we have, and again, I'll thank our French consultant Henri for coming up with some of these that he uses on his customer site. So we have a couple of desires here. So say we want to mark a field when it's required. Always have this little red triangle in the bottom corner. How do we do that? Or if we have a zoom field that we know we can gain focus to, click to it, and then either double click on it or press the zoom button on the toolbar. So that's our goal here. The way you do that is set the background image property either in fact, this one actually is doable inside the regular style sheet editor for NXJ because it's a CSS level 1 property. But what you're saying is the background image to a URL, and what you'll notice is that is relative to the static content folder. So it says images and then zoom required icon. And then you need background repeat, no repeat. And then in the field in the form, the NXJ field on the form, you simply set the style class to the text field required property. In this case, we have a zoom one that we're showing here. And again, we'll not show those will not show up in the IDE. So what I want to do now is go do a couple steps to show some of these features here. I'm first going to go, if I find my right window here, see if I have the right one here with the tab. Nope, we'll have to launch it manually here. Go to the invoice system. For those of you that have worked with NXJ or used examples or seen some of our other demos or webinars, this application is semi-familiar to you. It's the one that's included with NXJ that shows some of the features and power of NXJ. So first I'm showing you one that's been slightly modified from the one that's there. We removed some of the colors, but you'll notice it has the original toolbar and navigation and so on. And the one thing that I mentioned regarding confusing customers is you'll notice as I click between buttons here, the toolbars up top navigate there. They behave in there and clear for a new search and do a search and so on. But if I'm working down in a data view, a nested data region down here, and I really want to do a new search at the top because I'm done, the clear button clears out where my focus was rather than what I meant to do. So now if I do a search, it'll do there. So you'll see how I modified this. Again, this is my personal preference. Yours may vary, but it gives you an idea of things to work with. So again, we'd have to gain focus up to the main area, then do our either new or update or delete or record navigation. So what I had done very quickly was incorporated this, the toolbar that we used in the screenshot, and place that in a small subset of that in each of the data views. So I'm going to switch over to the NXJ developer. This is my modified invoice system here. Make sure we have the right form. Oh, actually, I don't have the right one open here. Let's open my NXJ project for the webinar. It's the same name as the other one, so I just want to make sure I didn't get confused. A couple things you'll notice in here. We have the Toolbar 2, the Toolbar Object, which is a series of those. And really, these are just images or image buttons. So this is just an image button that does our find and has a command context. Also in here, I have created some components. So a data view database operations, which just has a database operations. I also have a record navigation one, so if we wanted to place that into there. What you'll notice on these, the record navigation is set to form. I probably would change that really, but the database operations I've set to the parent, so wherever I drop it, it will work with those controls on. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do is just go ahead and deploy this, because it's going to replace it because it's the same context as my other application. I'm going to go ahead and do this. Is deploying to JBoss on my local server here. And we'll see a couple of things. So this has incorporated in it the style to show the required field and the zoom indicator. Well, this application doesn't have the zoom field, and the new toolbar. So it gives you a feel of some of the things you can work with. Let's wait for this to finish deploying and WebEx to catch up. Okay, this one had a web service as well, so it had to deploy that as well. So I'm going to go back and now launch that same application. And wait for it to come up. Oh. That's an error here. Okay, so you'll notice we have the style sheet now with just the field with the required icons, and if we type in a username but don't give a password, let's try reloading this again here. It may not have fully been deployed. Okay, so there we go. That did happen during the test, of course. So if I press Bob and Bob, you'll notice a couple things happened. You get an error automatically. This is a built-in behavior of NXJ to give a message about the required fields, and it'll highlight it and we'll log in as Bob. So that was a subtle thing there, but it does give a user an indication of the required fields. And so now we've done things a little different. We've spanned some lines here just to spread data out wider, and we now have the navigation controls to switch between records. And we also can do our clear operations here for the toolbar and do our searches. So I'm actually going to do one thing here while we're here. Normally this does not come up this way, so I'm going to go ahead and launch this in a new browser because that looks a little bit different, so bear with me for just a second. I'm going to restart this. Okay, much better. I was wondering why that. I think that I should have closed that browser out for the first time. So now, again, we have navigation that works on the form. And we also have, and I might use smaller icons on these, but I've embedded the data views, the same toolbar buttons in each of the regions. So either I can do a new or I can do my own individual search. But as I go record navigation up top, it'll either go to there, or if I do a clear to search on the top one, it will search only on the form no matter where my focus is. And again, it's a user choice of how you want to do it. The advantage also is that depending on where you choose to have the scroll bar at the top, your users don't need to scroll to the top of the form to do access to the various operations embedded in the data view. Okay, so at this point, I think that's what we want to cover for today's webinar. We're running close to our normal anticipated time for how long these last for. So I want to go back here to get to our Q&A sessions and see if anyone has any questions.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Kevin. Again, to post a question, use the question mark, the button with the question mark on your WebEx toolbar. Post a question, and we'll go ahead and answer it. And we'll go silent here for about 30 seconds or a minute just to look through what questions are coming up, and then we'll go through them. All right, we're back. Well, we don't have many questions. In fact, we have just one or two so far, but we'll go through those, and then if anyone else has any, please post them, and we'll go over them. So the first one is, where can I get those objects or samples that you've showed today? And the answer to that is we don't have them posted anywhere per se. Again, we're getting kind of the benefit of Kevin's experience in working with customers as well as Henri from France. So what I'm going to suggest you do is just contact your Unify representative and have them get in touch with Kevin McCormick, and he can get you those, and through that channel we can get you those objects or samples, or, you know, I guess in some cases it might be a project.
Exactly. We deliver them as a project with those components in them that you can copy and paste or export and import.
Great. Okay. And then the next question, it's the last one we have so far, which is how do I get this PowerPoint presentation? And actually what we'll do is, like we do with all of these, is we recorded this, so we will have a recorded version of this webinar posted on our website by early next week. And just go to unify.com. In fact, do you have a slide?
Yes, I do.
And if you go under News and Events, I think that's the title of it, News and Events, you'll find archived webinars, and just for all the different products we do, and just go to the NXJ section, and you'll find this one there next week. And with that, we don't have any more questions. Again, post them if you still have them, but we'll start closing this up. First of all, Kevin and I want to thank you for participating. We hope you found this useful. And in fact, when you exit this session, you'll get a survey. Let us know how we did. If there's particular things you liked, or things that you didn't like or you didn't see that you would have liked to have seen, we definitely incorporate all of that into making these webinars the best user experience possible, to borrow from Kevin's presentation. And the next one we'll probably go into more in depth on this topic, in particular for NXJ next month. But again, we do these webinars almost every month, During the summer here months, it gets slow, so we may miss a month or two, but stay posted. You'll see the invites for these. We'll let you know. The other product webinars that we do right now, we do one on SQL Base every month, and the next one is next week on Thursday? Tuesday. Okay, got it. So there's one there, and I believe that's on the Command Center, or Q. I'm trying to remember. Here, I have someone writing me a note. Oh, new features in 11.5. There we go. Okay, so yeah, our 11.5 release of SQL Base is out, and it's going to cover some of the new features in there in a little more depth and detail. And then we also do one on Team Developer. In fact, Kevin gave one on Team Developer yesterday, which was excellent. And you'll see more, again, of those next month as well. With that, we'll go ahead and close this out. If you have any questions or need any follow-up, again, get in touch with your Unify representative. And again, happy Earth Day.
Absolutely. Thank you.